This chapter, the 12th chapter, is titled The Marriage Cracks. My husband stayed in Rishikesh for a few days, recovering from the cold he'd caught the week before, exacerbated by the frigid temperatures of Badrinath and endless mountain bus rides. Finally, he did agree to move into the ashram with me, at least to save money. One evening, I brought him to meet my new guru, Swamiji, in his garden. Swamiji sat in a folding chair, and we sat on woven mats on the grass. On a small table next to him was a phone. "Oh, you have a cell phone," Jim chuckled sarcastically while I bowed. "It's only a cordless," Swamiji responded, slowly and softly. "You are blessed to go to Badrinath," Swamiji continued. "It is a very holy and beautiful place." "Yes, it was beautiful, but I was sick the whole time and came back early," Jim replied, the majority of his words left unspoken. "Tell me," Swamiji said. It's something he says frequently, offering open-ended space into which with grace truth can flow. "Tell you what," Jim asked. He was not going to flow into that empty space. He'd made up his mind before he entered the door. The meeting lasted only a few minutes, with Swamiji inquiring as to whether Jim was comfortable. Did he have a clean towel? Enough toilet paper? Was he eating well? Embarrassed by Jim's coldness, I responded for both of us, "Yes, Swamiji, it's all wonderful. Thank you so much." "One moment," he said and rose. A few minutes later, he came back with a box of cold Belgian chocolates. "You must have sweets. Someone brought these for me." He opened the box of chocolates and placed one in each of our mouths. I could see Jim's eyes roll as Swamiji reached out his hand to place the chocolate in his mouth. At least he took it. I bowed to Swamiji before Jim, and I rose. We walked out of his garden, and I turned to give Swamiji an "I'm sorry" look. He smiled and motioned with his hand not to worry. He then extended his arm outward as though we were hugging an invisible person. I didn't understand. He pointed to Jim and again motioned with his arm. It was a signal for me to put my arm around Jim. I did, and looked back. Swamiji put his thumb and forefinger together, forming an A-OK sign, and smiled. The next day, Jim announced he was going to Missouri, a quaint hill station established by the British in the mountains about 3 hours from Rishikesh. If I didn't join him, he said our marriage was over. I had no interest in going to Missouri. I had no interest in leaving Rishikesh for any reason, even to save our marriage. I told Surya, Swamiji's main attendant, that I needed to speak to Pujya Swamiji privately. A few hours later, Surya came to the small room where I was typing letters on a manual typewriter and said, "Pujya Swamiji will see you now." "I know I should care deeply that my marriage might be falling apart," I said, sitting on the floor of Swamiji's sitting room. "But I don't, really. Yes, I would love Jim to be happy and to be happy here. He wants me to come to Missouri with him and says that if I don't, our marriage will be over. But I am so happy here that if I have to choose between staying or being married, I would rather be here." Swamiji smiled gently. "Go to Missouri," he said. "Go with your husband. It is the right thing to do." In a newfound joy of doing the right thing, along with knowing Swamiji would be far away for the next few weeks anyway, I agreed. In the same ways, I was excited Or in some ways, I was excited to leave Rishikesh, eager to see whether whatever was happening to me had a half-life. Would the ecstasy dissipate as I drove away from Rishikesh? Was the joy that consumed my days and woke me in the night for no other reason than to revel in the situation dependent? Revel in it situation dependent? My heart knew it wasn't, but Dr. Zimbardo's straight-A student was a bit eager to find out. That was her professor in her psychology class on mind control. So, we took the 3-hour bus ride up to Missouri, and the streams of tears flowed from my eyes the entire way there. Like being married to Ramakrishna, Jim joked sadly. It would be funny if I weren't his wife. Ramakrishna was this very ecstatic spiritual being that lived in the 19th and maybe early 20th century. I think he might have passed away before the 20th century. I'm not sure. Around that time anyway. I found a wall in our hotel room at which I could meditate every morning and evening, something I had never done before coming to Rishikesh, where it often happened spontaneously, wherever I was. But now that I was in a hotel rather than at an ashram, now that there was a road in front of our hotel rather than Ganga, I wanted to make sure to stay connected. So I sat cross-legged on a pillow with my back against the wall of our hotel room every morning and evening. I closed my eyes and re-melted into the spaciousness that was growing inside me. One evening, Jim said he needed to go to Lucknow to visit another spiritual teacher from whom he wanted to learn. He invited me to come. I need to go back to Rishikesh, I told him. I knew that I needed to get back to Ganga and to Pujya Swamiji. I could call them forth in my mind and heart, but I also needed to be there physically. I wouldn't have had the experiences I was having if I were meant to be roaming around India. It would be more than a decade before Jim's heart opened fully to Pujya Swamiji, and nearly 20 years before he came back to Rishikesh. Jim had a picture of what and who he wanted in a wife, in a marriage, and in his life, and it did not include living in an ashram in Rishikesh. So, early one morning, after 3 days in Mussoorie, he boarded a bus for Lucknow, and I boarded one for Dhanauti, a lush, secluded mountain town on the way back down to Rishikesh. I loved Jim. I still love him, but the attachment to his physical presence, the fear of losing the secure bond of marriage, which gave me an identity, being Jim's wife, no longer existed. I could love him whether he was with me in the ashram or not. I could love him whether he was sleeping with other women or not. I could even, I discovered, love him when his anger took the form of scathing faxes that he sent me from cities throughout India, berating me for the choice I made and describing the affairs he was having with other women. The love I was able to access came from a seemingly bottomless and boundless source within. I did, though, wonder whether I was going crazy, whether I really not bothered. Was I really not bothered that my husband had left me to travel around India and be with other women? I poked and prodded my psyche, trying to get a reaction. There must be some sadness, some fear, some loss. But there wasn't. It was just love for him. The only sadness I felt was sadness for what he was going through and for how I was the cause of it. If being with other women helped, so be it. The waters of Ganga had pulled my attachments like sheets of Velcro off the objects to which they had been adhered, whether it was Jim, triple soy lattes, sinking into a thick mattress, or warm water streaming over me from a strong shower head. The waters of Ganga washed so completely over everything I had identified with, everything I thought was essential for a happy life, that simply basking in the sun as she rose over the Himalayas and danced on the waters of the Ganga was enough. I had no thought of divorce, or of my spiritual experience and my guru not being compatible with my marriage. I had no thought that we would not walk the path of Paramarth together and sit at Swamiji's feet together. Spiritual experience was a new, amazing, additional layer of my life, not something to replace my marriage. Now, with 2020 hindsight, I see that this is the way it needed to happen. I was being pushed through the first levels of an initiation into sannyas, renunciation. The easy detachment from my marriage was crucial. If it had been painful or wrought with uncertainty or longing, I could never have made this decision. I was not an abstainer of anything by choice. I did not value austerity. The only role simplicity and renunciation played in my life was in camping and backpacking. I could easily renounce a deodorant or change of clothes if it lightened my pack. I never thought about the extra baggage burdening my mind. But here was a grace that began to work through me, slowly removing all the baggage I carried around. Fear, emptiness, a longing to fill the space, drama, and anything that might soothe the anxiety. Slowly, through no merit of my own, this baggage was lifted along with the weights that bore down on my shoulders, heart, and life. Thank you for listening. And that is the end of the 12th chapter. I like these nice short chapters. Easily digestible, good for reading. I appreciate sharing this journey with you of Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati's. Namaste.